serious. What are some creepy stories from your culture? From Paraguay, Jose Hetere. He's a blonde, beautiful dwarf that goes around naked in the woods. He owns a golden stick that provides him with magical powers. He kidnaps the kids that don't sleep in the afternoon around 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. here. And if he returns them, they're often deaf or mute. Louison is similar to a werewolf. The Tuesdays and Fridays nights, he transforms into a horrible dog. The souls he takes never go to the afterlife, and that's why he's so feared. Some people think the 7th kid in every family grows to be a Louison. Pombero, some kind of elf. He is the guardian of the woods and wild animals. He lives in the countryside and announces his presence while whistling. If he is your friend, he can guide you through the woods and help you. But if he's your enemy, he can do all sorts of things to you. He punishes the hunters that kill more animals than necessary by making them disappear forever. I'm sorry if it's not well written. I did my best. Naken, a man that sits by a body of water, usually rivers, and plays his violin to lure children into the water. Marin, a woman born on Friday, the 25th of December. She sneaks into your room at night and kills you, but she has some OCD of sorts, and you can fend her off. If by leaving a pile of cow hair on your windowsill, she'll have to count them all, which hopefully leaves you with enough time to wake up. The Brothers Grimm collected stories of folklore throughout Germany during the 19th century. Amongst them are plenty of famous and often dark fairy tales. One example is the famous story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. During the 13th century, the city of Hamelin suffered from a great rat plague. The people of Hamelin were out of their wits. One day, though, a stranger in colorful clothes appeared and promised them to rid them of the rats for an appropriate payment. The citizens agreed and promised him a generous reward if he succeeded. The stranger was a skillful piper and played a melody on his flute that made the rats and mice of the city gather around him. Enchanted by his music, they followed him when he stepped into a nearby river where they drowned. The piper had fulfilled his promise, but the people of Hamelin denied him his reward. The stranger left angrily and without payment. Some time later, though, he returned and played his flute once more. This time, it was the children of Hamelin that fell under his tune's spell. He led them out of the town and into a cave under a mountain. Only 2 of the children returned, one blind, one mute, unable to tell where they had been. None of the other children were ever seen again. Small town in upstate New York. There used to be a train station there, back when people actually took trains anywhere in rural areas. Fairly well-off guy, well known in town, comes racing into the station right before midnight. Seconds later, a huge, old-fashioned, jet-black train with nobody aboard, I mean nobody, rolls into the station. No schedule shows a train arriving for another hour, but there it is. Guy runs through the booth and jumps onto the train. Train rolls off into the night. Nobody ever saw him again. Ooh, I've got some nice ones from De Druvenstreek in Belgium. Toe cutters. Tennis snidgers, who cut the children's toes when they walk barefoot through a field. The black dog, werewolf, local variant, who jumps on your back, then you have to carry him to a graveyard where he jumps off. Lauder Metakite, Lauder with his chains, a BDSM enthusiast who follows you when you're all alone at night, rattling his chains to scare you and being a general dick. Very similar to the aforementioned werewolf. Seraput monster, or something similar like Put de Vol. Greenhouse well monsters, a monster that lives under the lids, greenhouse wells, and pulls in children, then drowns them and devours them. The ruins of a monastery in the Sonian forest that was burned to the ground, where it's said you can still hear the monks and nuns chant in the night. Dogen, the eyes. A phenomenon where you get suddenly enveloped by smoke, see a bunch of eyes and some burning people, possibly connected to the monastery if you look at the description of the burning people in the Sonian forest. And a lot of witches, white wives, ghosts, bandits, etc. The wild hunt even made a pass through my village. How to prevent them? Simple. Make a cross, carry a crucifix, listen to your parents and the parish priest, and don't be a child. In Romania, I grew up on a farm, and my grandma and her sisters were super religious, but they also believed in folk tales. This one folk tale said that each year, on a specific night in summer, forgot the date, sorry, the day of the Sinzin, these mythical forest nymphs would come out and play their instruments together around town. You were never supposed to go outside if you heard the music playing because it was their way of drawing people out. My grandma's sister told me this story about a person from their village who was working late on that day and didn't want to go home. As he was working, he heard folk music and the sounds were getting closer and closer, so he hid in a haystack. He then overheard the sound of a string breaking and a female voice saying, "Oh no, my guitar string broke." Then another voice said, "Oh, don't worry, maybe that man over there can help." And they apparently took one of his muscles from his leg and used it as a replacement for the string, and since then, that man never walked on that foot ever again. This story used to scare me so much when I was a little girl, and I never knew if they made it up entirely or if it was a tale passed on through generations, but it was super creepy. Trinidad and Tobago, West Indies, some Caribbean folklore. Duendes, the souls of children who have died before they were baptized. They are doomed to roam the earth forever. They are seen playing in forests and near rivers, and they have no faces, and their feet are turned backwards. They may approach children and lead them astray in the forest until they are lost, or they may come near people's homes at night, crying and whimpering. To prevent the Duendes from calling your children into the forest at dusk, never shout their names in open places, as the Duendes will take their names, call them, and lure them away. Duppies. Duppies are ghosts that roam the earth at night. It is said that to keep duppies out of your house, you must either sprinkle salt or rice grains all around the house perimeter, as the duppy must first count each individual grain before entering, by which time the sun will have risen, and they must then return to the spirit world. La Diablesse. She has a face resembling that of a corpse, but hides it under a white, wide-brimmed hat and a veil over her face. One of her feet is a cow's hoof, which she tries to hide under her long white skirt. She turns up at village gatherings, where she is immediately disliked by the women present, but she utterly charms the men, and then asks one of them to take her home. He follows her, totally under her spell. She leads him deep into the woods, and then suddenly, she disappears. Unable to find his way home, he stumbles around in the dark until he either falls into a ravine or a river to his death. If you feel you may encounter a La Diablesse on your way home, take off all your clothes, turn them inside out, and put them on again. Mama de Lo, my favorite, a half-woman, half-snake with long flowing hair which she combs constantly. Her upper torso is a naked woman, the lower part a large anaconda's tail that is hidden beneath the water. Hunters tell stories of coming upon her in the deep forests we have. Men who commit crimes against the forest, like burning down trees, or putting animals to death, or fouling the rivers, could find themselves followed by her for life, both this life and their next. If you wish to escape her, take off your left shoe, Turn it upside down, leave it, and go, walking backwards until you reach home. Papa Boys. The lover of Mama Delo. He lives in the forest, and he is the father of the animals that live there. He is often seen by hunters and other people who live near the forest. He gets animals out of snares and treats sick animals. He is an old man who is very hairy, like an animal, and usually is only dressed in a pair of ragged trousers with a bamboo horn hanging from his belt. He can turn himself into the form of a large stag most commonly, or any other animal as well, to be able to observe the hunters unnoticed. He is usually very kind, but can be dangerous when crossed. He might even cast a spell on a bad hunter and turn him into a wild hog. Silk cotton trees. These trees still scare me to this day from all the stories I've come across. These huge trees are regarded with fear. It is reported to be very difficult to be able to find someone who will cut down a silk cotton tree, as they are said to be the home of spirits and duppies. To cut it down is to free them to roam the earth. Sukayant, a person, typically an old lady. Also heard lots of stories about this growing up, who has made a pact with the devil to be able to change herself into all kinds of different forms. At night she sheds her human skin and changes into a ball of fire and quickly flies around, sitting on tree branches, burning singular trees and fields, and leaving others untouched. She has to slip back into that skin before dawn breaks and the cock crows, otherwise she will not be able to get back into it. When people suspect that an old woman neighbor of theirs is a Sukayant, they go to her house at night and rub salt on her human skin so that it will shrink and she will not be able to get back into it and thus die.